Hey everyone, I'm Tori, and today I'm going to be walking you through my WNBA Tableau project. I built this to take a look at player stats in a deeper way, showing not just box scores and rankings, but how individual performance can add up to the team's impact. But before I dive in, I just wanted to quickly note that this data was pulled right before the All-Star break, so the most current flat stats are not reflected, and in future versions of this project, I'd like to set it to be updated live. All right, before I get started diving into how I built this, I wanted to show exactly what it is I built, which is on Tableau Public, a story, which is basically just like a PowerPoint version of all the dashboards or sheets that you create within Tableau. So you can see there are 4 sheets here. We have an all-around MVPs, offensive leaders, defensive leaders, and team rankings. Now I know that was fast, but I just wanted to give a quick little preview before I dive right in. Okay, so the first thing that you need to do when you're doing a data project like this is actually get your data. So the first thing I did was look up a couple different resources, and I landed on basketball-reference.com. And I liked this because they update this every game. They get the player stats per game, but then the best part about this is their advanced stats that I was able to download. And if you go down here, you can sort through and look through more of it. But the biggest thing that I needed to do was share an export. So getting a CSV and actually taking this data and putting it into my Excel sheet or my Google sheet over here in Google Sheets. So after that step of getting everything into my Google Sheet, you'll see here that I have 2 sheets per game 2025 and advanced 2025. Now this is your per game stats like I had mentioned, but the advanced one is what's really interesting because they're calculating efficiency, player offensive scores, defensive scores and rankings. So things like that that you don't get just off the bat with this per game 2025 CSV. But with that being said, I needed to combine these 2 data sets just for my own personal liking and organization. I wanted it to be all one data row with one player and all of their scores and stats when I get it into Tableau, just so that it would be easier for me later on. So with that being said, I came up with this combined WNBA stats for Tableau. And as you can see, I pulled it on July 22nd, 2025. And then you'll see this sheet over here called TOT fixes. Now, TOT means that a player has been on a team and another team as well. So it's just double teams, somebody who's been traded or something like that. And it messes up the stats a little bit. So what I wanted to do is call out those people, which was these people at the time, and correct their team to whatever their current team is. So I just looked it up and then I added it here. Now that'll come important here in a second when I pull up Tableau Public. But before I do that, I just want to dive a little bit more into some of this Google Sheets work because I didn't just, copy and paste it over here. I had to do a couple of different things to combine it the way that I wanted to, meaning that I also had this current team field here where I needed to do a VLOOKUP so that I could go to these combined sheets and add that to this overall sheet here. Okay, so with Tableau Public, which is Tableau's free version via Salesforce, you can use the desktop version or be in browser. I have had more luck with in browser as far as the app has been kind of buggy and crashes on me every so often. But that is on my MacBook, and so I don't know if maybe that's the case, but I think in the future, instead of doing the desktop edition, I'll probably stick to in the browser. But since this is how I built it, I'll show you how I did it here. So the first thing that I did was add a connection, which was basically just my CSV file that I downloaded from Google Sheets, this WNBA stats for Tableau, dated. But it's not just as simple as that because I wanted to experiment with adding other layers and complexity. I could have just, went in and all those 5 players who had the TOT and just, entered in myself, but I wanted to try this out. And basically what this means is I added a connection to this second CSV with all of those fixes, meaning that the player column is going to equal the player column in this CSV, so that when I go to my calculations that I use here later on, edit, we have this condition here where if the current team is equal to TOT, then we're going to replace it with the correct team that comes from that TOT CSV file. That comes from here. So it takes care of that for me, and we deal with all of our edge cases. But I'm sure you're wondering, what is a calculated field and where did this come from? Or if you're not wondering that, you're kind of like, okay, you just jumped into this. So let me back up a second and talk about how I organized my thoughts, organized the data, and how I wanted to do this. So the very first thing that I did was create some folders. I wanted a folder for calculated fields, defense, meaning defensive statistics, offensive statistics, and then the miscellaneous ones or the both ones. So with all of that being said, I now have my calculated fields, which are very important in my rankings because not only did I need to do this final team, but I also needed to calculate all of the defender ranks based off of the normalized defensive rating that I wanted to give them. And I wanted to normalize the defensive rating and the offensive rating that came from basketballreference.com so that I could give it more of a 0 to 100 rating type of feel, like kind of how video games do it. So when I go to my first sheet, I can see that her overall rank is 1, but her overall rating, an offensive rating, is 100%. And that would mean, she's at the top of the list, right? So we have a couple other ones down here, but then we get back into guard sheet. And that is very simple and similar to this all around MVP sheet, except for the fact that we're going by offensive rank now, not overall rank. And we're also going to be able to filter by position and only track the guards. Same thing with this big sheet, it's just vice versa. And then we go over to our defensive and we'll have our defender rank here. So on with our bigs as well. And then our team ranking sheet. And so this one is very interesting because especially at this time, Dallas didn't make all those trades recently. So it does help them a little bit. But, you look at their record and that you wouldn't think that they would come out this way. But then if you see our big over here, Miss King over here is having a hell of a season, right? So that's the reason why we can see in our team rankings how drastic that effect on the rankings was. But that's all sheet work, right? How did I get that into the story? Well, basically, I created a story and you drag the dashboards that you create over here. And I wanted to add some of those filters like I talked about in here since this was just the all around and it didn't do it by big or guard. So I wanted you to be able to filter it yourself. And then again, I just highlighting these top view and bottom view, defensive, and then that team ranking. And again, adding that note here, just because it might look a little deceiving at first when you're like, oh, then that must be the best team, or this must be the best team, or, it's not necessarily the case. This is more so about ranking players. And then that team ranking sheet is, how many players are ranking very high. That's what this will give you. So that's a quick walkthrough of my WNBA 2025 Tableau project, and it's been a great way to connect player performance with team impact and show how these advanced stats can tell more of a story. So thank you for checking it out, and if you want to see it on Tableau Public, you can see it on my profile. It's published, and I look forward to the next project.